Hey, and we are live. And hey, everyone who may be joining in, this is not the normal Food Tech News Show, which we have been doing on Fridays for the past month or two. It's actually Susan Schwally, who is going to be our guest. Carlos couldn't make it. So I thought, hey, why don't I take this opportunity to talk with my good friend, Susan Schwally, who is a longtime food and consumer trends and forecasting expert, and just ask you about what's going on, what you're seeing out there. So welcome, Susan.
Thank you, Mike. It's always great to be with you. As you mentioned, I have been watching consumers both from a purchase and a consumption, like a usage behavior, what they're doing in the kitchen for it's about 26 years now. I started out my career at Information Resources, working with all that purchase data, understanding how people shopped, and then I spent about 20 years almost at the MPD Group,
Yep.
studying what people eat, when, why, everything about those occasions. Also, what goes on in the kitchen. That's how you and I got connected. At the home show, a mutual friend, Jane Fryman, introduced us. Yeah, I've been just hanging around you for a while now, and you're going to be at SAS. So right now, I am kind of looking for my next gig, but I'm working with a group, a strategic consultancy, if I can say that word, called Brainwork.
Got
I've had a long relationship with them in my prior role at MPD and Circana, where they help provide qualitative insights to a product we had called National Eating Trends, which is all about what consumers do at food service and food. So I'm working with them to help understand the why behind what's going on in the kitchen and maybe what some of those consumer trends are that are out there.
Well, that's such an interesting topic now because I feel like it's all been discombobulated and rearranged since the pandemic.
Yes.
And throw in the fact that there's all new sorts of channels, the rise of things like frozen, the influx of things like air fryers into our kitchens,
Right.
delivery, and the way we're eating and buying across all these food eating windows and opportunities during the day seems like it's changed a lot since the past decade. So um, let's kind of dive into it. I mean, where
Yeah.
are we today with consumers in terms of how they're eating? And I imagine this differs a lot by generation, but like how are kind of people's buying and deciding on what they're eating nowadays?
Yeah, there are some differences by generation, of course, but if we kind of step out for a minute, wider lens, where we stand today in terms of, the average American or some of those macro trends going on, um, pro- versus pre-COVID, we are still eating in home more. More of our meals are sourcing, more of our eating occasions are sourcing from the home
Hmm.
than before the pandemic. So it's remained elevated a couple percentage points. It's sitting, I believe, last time I looked at the data, it's around 87% of our occasions sourced from that home pantry. That could be you ate it at home, you carried it to work, whatever the case may be. So that remains
Is
elevated because we've learned new things.
is it changing though? I mean, we had to eat at home during the pandemic. The last couple of years there's been inflationary pressure, so we've seen menu prices jumping up
Yep.
quickly. So something I would have bought at a Starbucks even, 3 years ago, maybe like 50% more now. So is that also driving in-home consumption?
I mean, absolutely, right? So it's not only that we learn new things and kind of became more home centric and on many fronts, but around food. But you've got the inflationary pressures, both not only on in-home food, but even more strongly in restaurant. There's some other
Mm.
things on the food service side where the experience isn't quite the same. Food service has definitely bounced back, but there's winners and losers in that space. But the space that really got hit the hardest was those sit down casual
Mm.
dining restaurants. So not the high end fine restaurants, and not so much if you think about fast food. Some of them are doing really well because they pivoted through technology, one of your favorite topics, to running those drive-throughs really efficiently. So if you think about it, even before COVID, did you know that more of our fast food was not eaten at the restaurant? It went home
Wow.
or
So
it was in
it
the
was
car.
takeout. It's takeout.
It
Okay.
was takeout. It was drive-through. And so this just kind of accelerated that. So that's some of the food service dynamics. And then within the home, there's, some tremendous financial strain on some consumers in terms of food. And even some of the more affluent consumers have noticed what's going on. And so there's just some of those shifts in home. The other thing I want to point out is for a portion of the population, there are more of us working at home. So lunch has been particularly impacted because both non-com as well as commercial food service, more of that may be in home.
Yeah, we're just walking to our refrigerator. Here in the Seattle market, the whole downtown was reinvented over the past couple of decades by Amazon going in there. And so you saw a whole build out of local lunch places and restaurants in that downtown Amazon core off of Lake Union.
Mhm.
And a lot of those guys have struggled or gone out of business because Amazon sent everyone home and they're trying to get everyone back, but a lot of them don't
Right.
want to come back. So you're seeing maybe at the max 60 to 70% of the amount of workers that were there pre-pandemic going downtown anymore. So that is obviously hurting food service and restaurants that are focused on office workers. But yeah, those eating opportunities from your own refrigerator, even if you're working during the day, have increased.
They have increased, yeah, absolutely. So that is a trend that we see. We are elevated towards in home, for sure. And along the way, we have picked up some new cooking habits. You mentioned the air fryer. That was the hottest selling kitchen countertop because it did things beautifully for us. I mean, it's convenient. It improved the experience in many ways. We have seen manufacturers, develop products specifically for the air fryer. I personally have a Shark Ninja dual drawer. Can make the whole
Nice.
meal in the air fryer because I have two different drawers. So there's some things like that have stuck. We baked more,
Yeah.
not necessarily baking more now, although there was an uptick last summer. I mean, there's all kinds of behaviors that have kind of stuck.
Yeah. For 6 months, I was a sourdough bread baker, but no
I
longer.
remember that. I
my
remember
my
that.
my mother or whatever we called it, the starter somewhere died in the fridge, and we moved on. But you talked about the air fryer causing CPG brands to offer new products. It does seem like frozen over the past 5 years has really come on strong, and I think that's because, and we talked about this before on the podcast. With good frozen product with an air fryer, you get almost, I think, fast food, quick service quality, which for
Mhm.
a lot of people at a much lower price point makes them pretty happy.
Yep. Yeah. Frozen food for a while now has really stepped up the quality of the offering, and for a while, we've seen even co-branding with restaurants, right? TGI Fridays, I think, was one of the first ones, maybe Chan's. So there's definitely been an uptick there. Now they have faced some headwinds with that lunch occasion because a lot of frozen
Mm.
foods used to be, carried at lunch. But there definitely has been an evolution there. Matter of fact, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about with you today is just how the CPG manufacturers are starting to use technology to make things happen in the kitchen through the food product. And
Mm.
I dare say, I sound like my grandma, I dare say, in some instances, it may shift the appliances that we use in the kitchen.
Give
So
some examples of that.
yeah, I'll give you some examples. So I think it was last November, Kraft came out with a Lunchables grilled cheese using their 360 crisp technology.
Mm.
So what it allows you to do is make a cheesy gooey grilled cheese sandwich in the microwave that comes out pan-like in terms of crispness and that
Ah,
toastiness. Yeah.
really?
Yes. So they have two different flavors. They have original, which, grilled cheese, and then a pepperoni pizza. And they're going to be expanding the line with that technology. And it's interesting if you look at any of their press releases, their head of, I think it was marketing, says, we are at the intersection of food and technology. So that's a step beyond putting air fryer instructions on something. It's actually developing some sort of technology that negates the stovetop or the toaster oven in this case.
Yeah,
Uh,
and so many of the people in tech think, okay, technology in the kitchen has to be like a smart oven or something like that. Or on the food side, it has to be this next generation alternative protein. But like these big CPG brands are applying new ways of applying heat or texturizing, and that's creating entirely different eating experiences. And by the way, I just have to say, uh, you say it was Kraft. I still think American cheese melted is the best thing in grilled cheese sandwiches and on other types of food. My wife hates American cheese, but I think on hamburgers, the
Oh,
cheeseburger
cool.
and grilled cheese, it's great. So
I mean, what melts better, really? Yeah.
nothing, nothing
No,
melts better.
Sargento wouldn't like that. They came
I think
out with
Da-
their milk
I think
cheese.
Kenji Lopez and David Chang would agree with us on that. I've heard them talk about that.
Okay,
But
all right.
go ahead.
I'll let it stand. I'm kind of cheese agnostic, but it looks like a pretty cool product. I need to find it. I have a son that I have made a million grilled cheese sandwiches for. There's a couple other things that I think are really interesting that could apply to the world of coffee. So I actually suggest you look up this commercial on YouTube because it's pretty fun. It is for the International Delights Cold Foam Creamer. And
Hmm.
so what this, I mean, this is obviously it's cold out of your refrigerator. It kind of looks like a whipped cream container, and you spray the foam on your cold or hot coffee. There's 3 different flavors, and it allows you to make specialty coffee with that. Not just with your espresso maker or whatever. It allows you to build out the other part without a foamer. I mean, you literally can make specialty coffee by buying the cold brew and this product, and you don't have to buy the foamer or the fancy Breville, whatever. So I think that's a pretty interesting product and an insight that they came up with over there.
There's always a lot of innovation happening, I think, on the beverage side. It seems like beverage side innovation on CPG products happens probably even faster
Yeah.
than food product side. And I think you have another one on ready to
Yeah,
drink
there's another one
cocktails.
that I think is interesting. So, look, ready to drink cocktails are not new. I mean, we all know that. I mean, there's just been a plethora of brands out there, and they're doing really well and hurting, microbrew and all those kinds of things. But what we're seeing now is the CPG folks not on the Alc Bev side that are entering that space. So, Absolute has a collaboration with Ocean Spray. And their point of differentiation is that it's premium vodka with real juice, and it's a sparkling product. So they're kind of saying, "Hey, we're not a flavor. Like we have the real deal here." And they have, let's see, they have 4 flavors, and of course everybody knows vodka. Who hasn't ordered a vodka cranberry? Maybe you haven't, Mike. It's like
I have, but
it's my
not in a
fallback drink.
while, not in a while, but
Not a lot. So there's cranberry, cran grape, cran raspberry, and cran pineapple. So I think it's interesting now, and you're seeing the Alc Bev folks enter the non-alcoholic space because I think there's a lot of room there. But I remember we've talked about some of those at-home cocktail makers and different things, and I got to think ready to drink with the variety that the manufacturers are putting out there. May put some hurt on that. So I just think it's interesting that in this ebb and flow of technology and how you solve for consumers, that there's some technology on the cooking or prep side that's being built into foods that we haven't seen in a while.
I was at the Google Food Lab this week in Chicago, and someone was talking about the how millennials are not drinking as much, and it's starting to freak out alcohol brands. And I just don't know if you looked at data, have we really confirmed that overall alcohol consumption is dropping significantly for that generation?
I
And I mean,
believe, yeah, I think we have. I haven't
okay,
laid eyes on it, but directly. But there's definitely more of a dry movement, if you will. I mean,
mhm,
there's other options now that are maybe perceived healthier, especially with the loosening on cannabis. But there's also, I think, some health concerns and recognition
yep,
around alcohol.
it is poison. I mean, we can, I mean, a beer or a
Delicious
glass of wine.
poison, depending
Yes,
on
delicious poison. A glass of wine, as the French will tell you, will maybe do you okay and actually help you. But
yeah.
the way Americans often tend to drink in excess, it's definitely poison to your body. So, and it seems like that is a real trend that's happening. So the CPG brands are reacting. And so, but you also have some other things that are happening with regards to the home kitchen and innovation, bringing
Yeah.
that restaurant experience into the home kitchen.
Right. So in the context we were talking about more of our, meals are coming from in home, and that restaurant experience, that restaurant that you love may not be there, or it may be too not too costly for you to go out to that restaurant, or maybe there's still labor issues. You're not getting great service. Why not, in the comfort of your home, replicate some of the things that you love? And the manufacturers have picked up on this and harnessed it in a couple ways. So there's a couple things. There's a lot on the dessert side, like, because I feel like it's kind of a little bit easier to operate in that space. So there's one called the Pillsbury stuffed cookie kits. So it gets you more of a like premium ooey gooey experience, like you might get. I'm forgetting the name of the cookie. Crumble cookie.
I don't care. I'm already sold. Anything that's with Pillsbury stuffed cookies, that sounds like a winner.
Yeah, Pillsbury stuffed cookies. The one that and Hostess also came out with Metamores, which this is a variation on something that's been out there before, but it's lava cakes. I think years ago I was talking with my friends at Brainwork, and they were talking about Red Lobster used to be known for some sort of lava gooey, and then Domino's, you took a swing at it. So now we've got it coming from Hostess instead of just off the shelf. You can get this lava cake. The one I think is really interesting is Omaha Steaks has partnered with they're kind of co-branding with the Melting Pot restaurant. And they're offering a fondue bundle that you can order to make that a guaranteed success within your home, right? Like bring people over as a social experience, a gathering. It could even be around a sporting event, and they will supply the whole thing. So Omaha Steaks they call them their Omaha Steaks dippers. So it's pre-cooked and portioned pieces. You can select from steak to chicken to shrimp to sausage, anything that you want in your fondue kit. And then they have a couple different cheese, meltable, made for fondue. There's also a bread and a dessert that comes with it. And you get this whole bundle. It's $85. I think it feeds a lot of people. And you don't even have to have the fondue pot. You can microwave it or put it on the stovetop, and it's just ready to go. So I think that's a real
interesting. So the Omaha Steaks, which we all know is kind of that old school deliver frozen steaks to your house business. I've gotten them for like a Christmas from like the parents, I think. They're partnering with the Melting Pot restaurant, which I that's a fun restaurant, by the way. That whole concept of like a big fondue, it's like takes me back to the I was a kid during the 70s, but it takes me back to maybe the 80s when my mom was doing those fondues. And they're kind of come back. They've come back, and so you can do this fun fondue party, and they deliver the pot for you and everything. Is that
no?
Okay.
The way it's pictured, they're showing it on just some but that's Mike. I think that's interesting because while you don't have to have the fondue set, and you don't have to have the sterno can, I mean, maybe people will go out and buy the fondue set, right? Because it's the experience. It's the whole thing, right? You put with the sticks. I mean, you're still dipping it. It's still a fondue, but I think it's an interesting space.
It sounds like a lot of fun. I would go out and actually buy the fondue set, just go full bore into that experience. That sounds like a lot of fun. So
that's what I think people are going to do.
So you are going to be coming out to Seattle in June, Smart Kitchen Summit. You have a really great talk. You're talking about how consumer trends will be reshaping the consumer kitchen and the kitchen of tomorrow. And let's be honest, it's these trends that are happening today that are taking hold in these generations, millennials, and then Gen Z, and then their kids, that will shape what the kitchen looks like 50 years from now. Because our behavior ultimately shapes the place that we live in. So tell us a little bit about the talk.
Yeah. So again, I'm working with Locke and Sterling at Brainwork, and they're together. We're looking at what are the challenges in the kitchen for these generations. How are they currently using technology, and as it relates to cooking, and then anything that we can about their attitudes about it. But I think by understanding kind of what their needs are in the kitchen and around food, and how they're currently using technology, we're going to be talking about some of those gaps where we see there's opportunity to innovate. So we'll look at Gen Z, we'll look at millennials, and I think I'd like to talk about Gen X. What I think is interesting about Gen X, being you and I are Gen X, right?
Yeah, we're not dead yet.
We're not dead yet.
But we're the forgotten generation. We know that because we're the small generation. But yeah.
I think though this is an area to pay attention to us, and we'll talk about this more. But we are empty nesting, unless you're like me and started really late. We're empty nesting. We're going to go through that downshift. We're going to go through the smaller house, changing up the kitchen. and there's fewer I mean, we're becoming more prevalent, and I'd like to think that we have some financial assets. Like we came of age, right? Unlike the millennials and Gen Z, where they got nailed by world events and recessions and pandemics, we didn't. And I think that we are going to drive some innovation in sales in
Hmm.
kitchen, durables, countertop, whatever. And we have a very different pragmatic approach to technology and food. We're rather practical in a way, and are different than the millennials. The millennials are going to have a whole different set of issues. Right now, I believe the midpoint of millennials is age 31, and that's right about at family formation and house purchasing. In
Hmm.
the US, it's a real critical place. And we've got more people renting than ever. There's this concept of this idea of a forever apartment. And we obviously we have affordable housing issues, and starter homes aren't being built. So if you're in a rental environment, you're not in charge of the appliances, but you can influence what you put on your countertop. So there's some different dynamics there, and particularly as they start to figure out how to feed their families after they've been known for authenticity and experiential, and the Instagramming of food. Like, how do they shift to feeding a family? Can they stay true to any of that? Is anyone going to offer them the opportunity for that? I think it's a really interesting space.
I'm so
Um,
excited to hear this. I think, yeah, just the difference between Gen X and millennials, it seems so drastic. And then like Gen Z, and can we finally forget about baby boomers? I'm just kidding. But
I don't know,
because
let's
so
talk
much of the
about it.
conversation, so much
Yeah,
of the conversation for most of my life has been about the baby boomers. So it's
yeah,
interesting to really hear about
yeah.
all these others. So
We had a robust discussion this morning, about, do we talk about my argument is that the majority of the boomers have gone through the downsize, have gone through retirement,
yeah,
the downsize, and they're probably basically set with what the kid. Now there's certainly opportunities there around aging, I think, in accessibility to food and meal planning. But I it might be the time to talk about Gen X, Mike.
I'm so excited. Hooray.
Yeah, yeah. And Gen Z is a whole different animal. And you'll remember
Yep.
when they started coming of age, everybody said, well, they're just an extension of the millennials. And
No, they're
you
not.
know,
They're not at all, are
they're
they?
not. They're not. So I think there's going to be some different, they're going to be very interesting because, digital natives.
They make me
Um,
feel old. They make me feel old because sometimes I'm talking to Gen Z and feel like I'm talking a completely different language than them.
I've
And
learned a
the humor,
lot.
the
Yeah.
words are different. The humor's different, and
Mhm.
so it's just it's a different language. But I love it. It's always great to learn from these folks. So, and my kids, I have to talk to them because my kids are Gen Z. So
Yeah. So my son is 13, and we are in the midst of middle school, and there's a lot of jargon, and he's always stunned when I know I don't always, but if I know what he's actually saying, what the term is, he just cannot believe that his Gen X mom actually knows what he's talking about.
Well,
But
I can't wait to see you in Seattle, Susan. I always love talking to you, and ever since you were on stage, I think in the 2019 SKS, and when we met in Chicago at Housewares, I've always
yeah,
appreciated it. As a former market analyst myself, I love data, and you
yeah,
always do a great job using data to tell a story. And I love looking at the different generational differences, and so I'm looking forward to seeing you in Seattle.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And if I can just give a plug for the Brainwork folks,
For sure, for sure.
yeah, check out their website. It's BrainWRK, no E, no S, brainwork.co. And they're doing some really interesting work. As I mentioned, they're bringing the qual. I used to partner with them to bring the why to the sales data, but they're doing it from observed behavior. So
Okay.
it's pretty interesting stuff. So that's my little
So
plug, and I really appreciate the conversation today.
yeah, and everyone check out Susan's work. We'll put that URL in the description on the video, and people can check it out. But thank you, Susan, for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And everyone, thank you for listening. It's been a little different than our normal food tech news show, but actually probably even more fun because Susan's great to talk to. So
Don't tell
we'll be
Carlos.
back next week. We won't tell Carlos. Shh, everyone.
Okay, don't
All right,
tell him.
thanks, Susan.
Okay, bye.